The Tennessee Titans are destined to regress. We talk about that and more.
You are listening to KC Sports Network, the #1 podcast network for today's Kansas City sports fans. With former players from your favorite teams, informed perspectives, and former insiders, this is the place for you. You can find us wherever you listen to podcasts or on our YouTube channel, all over social media, or our morning newsletter, KCSN Daily, dedicated to your Kansas City Chiefs. KC Sports Network is proudly presented by Emprise Bank, your partner in possible.
KC Laboratory, sponsored by Emprise Bank.
It's the KC Laboratory presented by Emprise Bank. You may not get Alexa to fold the laundry, but you can transfer money with voice banking. Transfer money, make loan payments, get your routing number, and even find ATMs while making dinner or the TV timeout of the Chiefs game. Emprise Bank, our partner in possible, member FDIC. They're absolutely wonderful to work with. Absolutely wonderful to work with is my dear pal, Matthew Lane. We're getting ready to preview the Buccaneers or the 49ers and the Titans games. But Maddie, before we even start, who wins? 2 Titans or 150 49ers? That's how Tucker's handicapped this one.
Well, okay, so this is something we do before every single one of these that you guys have not been privy to until now. And if you go check out Tucker D. Franklin on Twitter, you can see all of these polls. But this is the question that we start off our little meetings with to figure out how this is going to go. We went with 2 Titans versus 150 49ers. And listen, like, I wanted to give the 49ers a chance, because like I've watched 3 episodes of Gold Rush in my life. They know how to blow stuff up, right? So like you think they might have a chance, but I mean, come on, Titans, really? Titans.
So like Greek mythology. There's no chance of like if we're lining up every mascot, this mythical figure is going to win. And amazingly, so Tucker has put up a poll and he's catching everybody up on all this. Only 63% of you think 2 Titans would win at this juncture.
Counterpoint, though. I do have a counterpoint. Like, a 49er, probably not Greek, probably doesn't believe in Greek mythology, therefore Titans don't exist. Like, how does that play out? Like, grizzled guy panning for gold in a river of the mountains of Nevada. Like, he doesn't think a Titan exists. So, like, if a mythological being isn't there, how can you lose a fight to it? You know what I mean?
There is nothing you can't Maddie answer.
I don't think that's a Maddie answer. That's philosophical.
No, that is looking.
All right, so we're working on the
loophole.
San Francisco 49ers for the team.
Yeah, it's game preview time. That's what we've been doing every Thursday show. And we are on to week 7. The Chiefs travel to the San Francisco 49ers. Matthew, what do you think about the quality of the roster for the Niners?
Overall, it's pretty good. I think you can poke some holes in this roster. I don't think their offensive line outside of Trent Williams has been quite as good as they had hoped for from 2 years ago when they were in the Super Bowl. And I think you can start to see a few holes start to pop up when you glance through it. The secondary hasn't always played up to the level that they've needed it to. The linebacker group is centered around Fred Warner, who's great, but not a lot of other impact guys there. But I mean, at the end of the day, it's a quality roster. It's just kind of, they have a few issues in key spots, not even issues, just average play in key spots that I think kind of drags it down. And then when you're dealing with a team that up until this year has been running Jimmy Garoppolo out at quarterback, you can't have average play at key spots and then only have average or below average quarterback play and expect to be okay week in and week out. I think that's kind of where their issue has come along. But even still, even with those things, you've seen how well they've done in the playoffs. You saw their playoff push last year, what they can do. They made it to the Super Bowl not that long ago. Like, they're still like very competent and quality roster top to bottom. I just think they either need Garoppolo to step up, they need Trey Lance to be that guy, or they have to somehow get more assets to start filling out these issues at key areas. Like I said, finding another playmaker or two in the secondary, shoring up that offensive line outside of Trent Williams. You fix those things, and then you don't need great QB play. But in 2022, if you don't have a perfect team outside of the quarterback has to carry the team, and Jimmy Garoppolo just can't do that.
Yeah, definitely some questions for me when I look at the quality of this roster. The construction of the offense is always interesting to me. Obviously, there are some stars. Like I think Debo Samuel's a star, Trent Williams, Brandon Ayuk, very up and down. Jawan Jennings has had a solid NFL career to this point for being a 7th round pick, but I don't know if he's necessarily a world beater. It's a unproven group with a ceiling that's not necessarily as high, I think, as maybe other rosters in the NFL. Very, very good, and there's definitely some blue chips. But it's also, some of these blue chips are at some of the positional value, some less positional value, like linebacker and Fred Warner, even though he's an absolute game changer.
I will fight you
I
that
know.
Fred Warner doesn't matter. So
He matters. That's what I'm saying. Like he's like one of the few linebackers that matters, but still. Quality of the staff, though, is why this team was in the NFC Championship game again last year, Maddie.
it was. Kyle Shanahan's one of the best offensive minds in football. I think I made a case a couple of years ago that he might be coming for that number one spot. I'm going to back off of it a little bit because part of that is his decision to keep running out a limited quarterback, but some parts of his offense can be limited in terms of pushing the ball all over the field and stretching the field in every direction. Is that a Jimmy Garoppolo problem or is that a Kyle Shanahan problem? Because you kind of have to remember he picked Garoppolo. He's picked some other guys that haven't necessarily stretched the field vertically that often. So that's his only flaw, but he's still one of the best offensive minds. And then DeMeco Ryans, one of the hottest defensive coordinator names going around this last offseason for a head coaching or a better, newer defensive coordinator job. What he's done with that defense, but that secondary not only wasn't very good to start, but was injured nonstop last year. And I mean, they were playing lights out. Their rotations against the Packers, like they were playing, match coverage stuff left and right. But I would have such a hard time drawing off some of the stuff they did because they had guys that weren't playing how you would traditionally play. They had guys that were playing different techniques on the coverage that they just knew what the route was going to be and the way they were rotating. And a lot of it does center around how good Fred Warner is, but DeMeco Ryans found a way to weaponize having the best middle linebacker in the NFL and how to make this average, the secondary around them play relatively well for most of the season.
Yeah, you can't speak enough of the offensive coaching staff too. And you think about we talked about like the offensive line isn't particularly great. The offensive weapons were a little up and down, but I mean Kyle Shanahan continued to find ways to maximize the talent of that group. And I'm not trying to disparage the talent entirely because that is a very, very good group out there. Debo Samuel's utilization, you saw that they found a way to get him the ball with some consistency, and some of that consistency was putting him behind center and running the football and handing the ball off to him. So creative. They maximize the talent of the guys around them to the point where I think they play above their heads. I think they elevate themselves above their talent level relative to some of the other teams in the National Football League. New additions, Matthew. There's some that I could see you going one place. We'll see where it goes.
They actually don't have that many though. Like I would assume we're talking about Charvarius Ward here. So I think that's the obvious one. But I mean, outside of him, like they had some draft picks that are going to be worth mentioning, but not a lot. So it's not a team that added a lot of new players, but they did go out. They spent some money and signed Charvarius Ward, who was coming off of his best season with the Chiefs. I think he perfectly fits what that 49ers defense likes to do. He's going to be great in this base cover 3 stuff with a lot of this match zone coverage. He's going to be allowed to be physical. It fits how he plays really, really well. I do wonder switching systems from Steve Spagnuolo's system, who kind of found a way to maximize what Ward does by limiting what he's asked to do in terms of the versatility, and then just putting him in one spot, having him do one thing, the majority of the time. Will the 49ers do that? Will they ask him to be more versatile? I don't know. But they do at least, he's a good addition because he gives them their best cornerback on the roster that they've probably had since the few games where Richard Sherman was playing at a high level and they had him 3 years ago.
Yeah, I mean, he's tailor-made for that defense. It's a great fit for him, and I think obviously the Niners recognize that too because they went out and paid him a decent chunk of change. Another new addition is Drake Jackson, the defensive end out of SC, who's he's not having to go too far. He's staying in state and playing for the 49ers. And obviously he was a guy that we all kind of talked about a lot over the course of draft season. A lot of raw traits. Maybe he hasn't completely put it all together yet, but there's definitely some flashes and some intriguing, athletic profile, physical profile. And the pressure's not on him right off the bat to be a major contributor. They can, they have enough guys around him, and they've added some interesting lottery tickets. I know they traded for Charles Omenihu last year. They signed Kamoko Toure this year, so they've got some veteran presence there along as well. But Drake Jackson's an intriguing guy that by this time in the season you might get a little look at him. He's, I believe, the first pick that they had in the entirety of the draft, because I don't think that they had a first round pick because of the Trey Lance trade. Players to watch, Maddie.
I'm gonna go Deebo Samuel. A lot of trade talks coming through this offseason. There's some pushback that he doesn't want to play this slot back position, and he's still getting paid. He's going to go out there and play. There's no questions about that. He wasn't traded. I have no doubts he's going to go out there and play. But what does it look like if Kyle Shanahan and that offensive coaching staff decide to just use him as a receiver? I understand that he was very good in the metrics, efficiency-wise and analytics-wise as just a receiver earlier in the year, but that offense clearly started clicking more when they started utilizing him as a runner and getting him the ball in more ways. But he's clearly pushing back against that. So what happens if they go about using him as this slot back again, and he's not taking on full contact from linebackers every time he touches the ball? What happens if he is angling to get out of bounds to preserve his body and last longer in the NFL rather than being beat up all the time? How does that play out? Do they transition him back to that usage that he saw early in the year where he was just a really, really good wide receiver? It's like, I think that's kind of the key. What does this offense look like, and how do they use Deebo Samuel when you come up off this offseason where he was clearly trying to get out a little bit based on the way they were overusing him or making him take too many hits for what he felt he should be taking?
I really wanted to go with George Kittle as the player to watch. But I think I've got to go with Trey Lance, because by all indications, Trey Lance is going to be the quarterback of this team this year. Sounds like they've all but handed him that opportunity. They're not really, it doesn't seem like they're particularly interested in giving Jimmy Garoppolo that job. It sounds like it's Trey still, it's Trey's, it's not even Trey's. I think they're rolling with Trey Lance. And Trey's the guy that they're hoping can elevate the ceiling of this football team, the guy that can, help ascend this team beyond, some of the paint by numbers Jimmy Garoppolo operation that they've had a lot of success with. Obviously it's been a very consistent, product when the group's healthy, because they've had a lot of success, a couple NFC championship games, a Super Bowl appearance, an 11-point lead in the Super Bowl, it was 10-point lead in the Super Bowl. But I'm fascinated to see if he's able to elevate this team enough, and if they can live with some of the mistakes that he makes as a young quarterback, or if he makes a ton of mistakes or gets positioned. Like, this offense is kind of in some ways well fit for a young quarterback, because they can lean on the run game. They can lean on Trey Lance's legs as he develops as a passer too. And so I'm really interested to see the Trey Lance experiment, and he should be more than settled by this time of the season. I got a question for you. No, I got a question for you though. How bad does Trey Lance have to be for him to get replaced by Jimmy Garoppolo during the season, not because of injury? Like, what does that look like? What is the point in which Kyle Shanahan says, okay, I need to start winning now and not developing? What's their record have to be? Or just like, generally, how bad do we think Trey Lance has to be? It's definitely record driven, I think, because Jimmy Garoppolo was really bad for stretches last season as well. So
yeah,
if by the time the Chiefs are in town and they're 1-5, that might be enough. But even then, like at that point, I don't know. I think Kyle Shanahan has enough grace that they're probably going to let him ride it out with this team and let him ride it out with the mistakes of Trey Lance. So I don't know.
Let's say they're 3-3 and Trey Lance hasn't been good. He hasn't been a disaster, but he definitely has not been good. He's been more bad than good. Do you think you see a Brian Flores in Miami situation where they want to go back to the veteran that is going to win them more games? Do you want to go back to the veteran that might get you into the playoffs and a chance to make a run rather than developing the younger guy who is clearly struggling? When you have enough talent, we talked about, they have enough talent around a competent quarterback to at least knock on the door of the playoffs or make it in. They've proven that. Do they go back to what's tried and true? Or do they ride through the rough patches with a young quarterback?
I think they ride it out 100%.
Okay.
Like I don't think, I mean, you can't waste another year of the Trey Lance experiment. He's going to, you've got to find out now. You've got to find out sooner rather than later, and continually kicking the can down the road for the known commodity, the safe play that, yeah, you've had some success. You haven't been able to achieve, and this team isn't as good as the team that went to the Super Bowl. So no, you've got to ride it out with Trey Lance, I think. How does this team beat the Chiefs, Matthew?
I don't see an easy path for this 49ers team beating the Chiefs. We've had a lot of teams so far doing these where it's kind of been, it's a toss-up if both teams play well, or if this certain player or team gets kind of hot, you can easily see them outscoring the Chiefs or slowing them down. This team, looking at on the surface, I don't know if I see a very easy, direct path to them beating the Chiefs. I think it would have to be a little bit of an off day from Mahomes and company. I think you would have to have Nick Bosa, Javon Kinlaw take a huge step forward and start being kind of that guy that was hyped up in the draft process. Eric Armstead, Drake Jackson, just somebody stepping up in this defensive line, dominating. Fred Warner erasing the entire, middle of the field, this secondary gelling together with DeMeco Ryans. Like, it would have to be a stellar defensive performance, while the Chiefs also are a little bit off their A game, because I don't have as much faith that Trey Lance is going to hit the ground running. I think there's going to be a lot of growing pains based on what we've seen from him in college and when he did play last year. So, I don't think it'll be easy for them to put up a lot of points on most teams, the Chiefs included. So it would have to just be on the back of a great defensive game.
Yeah, I think it's the defensive line beating up the Chiefs' offensive line, because there's still plenty of talent there. Eric Armstead, Javon Kinlaw, that Nick Bosa guy, and maybe some of these other guys, these secondary pieces we talked about. Drake Jackson, Kamoko Toure. I mean, the Samson Ebukam, kind of a lighter guy. But yeah, they're throwing some intriguing bodies out there. So it takes some of those guys, getting really hot up front and running the football with great success. If the Niners can run the football to the kind of clip that they've been able to, where the helplessness you feel watching sometimes against this team, Debo gets hot. I mean, that's it, but I'm still not banking on it. Non-Mahomes.
Hold on. We have a new question that you do not put in the rundown. I don't know why you hate the new question. Which non-Mahomes player could the Chiefs give the 49ers to make them the best version of themselves?
Which non-Mahomes player could the Chiefs give the Niners? Travis Kelce. I'm just kidding.
That's my answer. I can only imagine what Kyle Shanahan would do with Kyle Juszczyk, George Kittle, Travis Kelce, and Trent Williams doing whatever the heck they keep doing with Trent Williams. I can just only imagine. And then Debo, what does that offense look like? I can't even really picture it. It's like it maybe not the smartest move, but it's definitely the move I'd want to see the most, because I think that would actually be fascinating to watch. And he's the one offensive coordinator that would find a way to make it work the best, I think.
Are we allowed to consider Orlando Brown? No. I don't know if he's a great fit.
No, their tackles are okay. Like, I don't think Mike McGlinchey's been good, but he's not their worst offensive lineman, right? It's like Creed Humphrey, Joe Thuney, I think, are probably the smart, safe bets here. I thought about Justin Reed to play strong safety and pair him with Jimmy Ward. That would give them two safeties in this defense that likes to move these pieces around. Like, there's a lot of good options, but I like the fun factor of Kelce, Kittle, Juszczyk, and Debo all on the field together.
Who's the Chiefs' non-Mahomes MVP, Matthew?
Well, the last time these two teams played, Travis Kelce only had 43 yards. He had a touchdown. It wasn't a great performance. The 49ers did a great job holding him down because Fred Warner is amazing. So for that reason, it's really hard to pick him here. So instead, I'm going to tell you why I think he'll have a better game against the 49ers this time and go for over 100 yards. So here's the thing. Fred Warner's great. but he can literally only be in one spot at a time. If the Chiefs are altering their offense, which I think we all anticipate them to a little bit, go a little bit heavier, get some play action stuff involved, Travis Kelce might have a little bit more space to work with. I don't think the Chiefs wide receivers are going to scare the 49ers secondary, and as smart as they play, it might be hard to find busted coverages. The one guy that can pick apart zones, no matter how good the zone is Travis Kelce. I think he's the safety blanket versus a very good team in coverage. As long as you have enough pass protection, Travis Kelce is going to eat and get revenge for having a relatively game against them in the Super Bowl.
Give me Nick Bolton. I think Kyle Shanahan is just an outstanding play caller. He really does a lot in the middle of the field. He's able to get guys running free in the middle of the field. He really does a good job playing on the instincts with the play action. The highest instincts for the Chiefs at the linebacker position reside in Nick Bolton's brain. And he's a guy that, you hear him talk about he wants to be better in coverage this year. I think this is like one of those games that's going to be fascinating to watch because I think, his instincts will continually just show more and more on the field. But this is a game where you're going to really need it. And I think this is a game where he shows that. The play ID from Nick Bolton becomes very valuable in the game against the Niners. All right, Matthew, guess the line.
Okay, you said it's in San Francisco?
Yes.
Chiefs by 4.
Chiefs minus 1.5.
Wow. See, what I've realized right now, going through these, Vegas is a little bit timid right now of what the Chiefs are going to look like this year. And so, I get that. And especially these games that are later on, like this one, I expect to have, obviously, they're going to have the most movement because we get the most information. But even right now, if you told me I'm giving the Chiefs the benefit of the doubt that by the time they play the 49ers, they figured some stuff out a little bit. I get it. I get why Vegas is so low on them, but the trend is definitely there. Vegas, not loving the Chiefs this year.
You've done a good job guesstimating the line so far at this point, though, Matty. So credit to you.
That was a big whiff. That's probably the biggest whiff I think I've had yet.
Yeah. You've been on for the rest of them. Yep. We're going to take a break. We're going to take a break. We'll be right back after this. All right. We are continuing our game previews, and we just got done with the San Francisco 49ers. The Chiefs get a bye week in week 8. And then in week 9 on Sunday Night Football, the Tennessee Titans come into town. What's the quality of the roster for the Tennessee Titans, Matthew?
Titans are a weird roster, right? They always are every year.
Always.
Titans fans in the YouTube comments yelling at us again this year. They eviscerated us last year.
I hope they find it this time.
A little give and take there. But here it is, straight up. I think this Titans roster has slowly trended downward from 3 years ago when they were on this upswing of being this really feisty, really fun, good team that had all this talent based around, Derrick Henry and getting the most out of Ryan Tannehill. But I think they started to take a step back. And the whole thing now is they have a bunch of Mike Vrabel type guys. They have a bunch of guys that just kind of embody their head coach. And if they all work or if it gels together, it works. See the Colts. The Colts are a team that constantly outperform, I think, the talent level of the roster because all the players are on the same page. If that happens with the Titans, it works. But when you break them down and single everybody out, I don't love the collection of talent. I think there's just, their wide receiver room, I think, is taking a step back with losing AJ Brown. We don't know what Derrick Henry's going to be. The offensive line coming off injury, the offensive line has taken a step back almost every single year for the past 3 years. As guys get older, they lose some guys and they haven't been able to replace them with proven stars yet. Defensively, that secondary is just struggling to find guys to step in and play at a top tier right away. It's not bad. None of these players are bad, but I don't know if I see the stars in the making across this roster. And it's just kind of a collection of guys that work well together is what they're relying on. And I think it's hard to win in the NFL that way anymore.
Yeah, I don't know if this is the right place to say this. This is fine. I think the quality of this roster is dwindling enough to a point where I don't think that this team, I think the window is close. I think that opportunity is close for this football team.
They do have a lot of young guys. I will say they have a lot of young players though.
Yeah, but I think that the aging core, the ceiling of the quarterback has become very, very clearly defined. And your running back's not getting younger either. And so you look at the totality of this team, their identity is built around Derrick Henry, who the mileage is starting to show a little bit on Derrick Henry. And Ryan Tannehill's not a good quarterback. And, I don't know if I believe in
That's the EPA king to you, sir.
It's, our EPA king. There's sectors of football that thought he was the best quarterback in football for some reason. It's weird. I think some of these draft picks have maybe, I don't know. I don't say it, I'm not ready to give up on them, but I don't know if you're excited about their outlook entirely either. So it's like there's just some different, like Zach Cunningham. They ate the whole Zach Cunningham contract, and I don't love it. And I think there's a ceiling. I think they're capped, and I don't think that this is a team built to churn over the roster and develop a new young core. And I don't like the outlook of the young core. There's one player, I'm sure we'll talk about, that we're probably really hyped about, but like I look at the rest of that defense and I'm not banging the table for any of them. Banging on the table for any of them. What do you think of the quality of the staff though, Matthew?
So this is where I think the big kind of breakdown for this team lies with me is they've lost their offensive coordinator and defensive coordinator over the past couple of years, right? And when you're dealing with a team that doesn't have top tier talent, everyone has to be on the same page. You have to kind of be carried by the coaching staff. I think Mike Vrabel is capable of doing that. He's a good motivator. He's a relatively good game day coach, and he's good at getting his type of guys getting to try hard. The problem is I don't trust defensive coordinator Shane Bowen. I don't trust offensive coordinator Todd Downing to make everybody play at their best game in, game out, play in, play out. Like that's where I think they're a little weak. Their coordinators aren't bad. They deserve NFL jobs. I don't know if I'm a Titans fan and I'm sitting there and I'm looking at my coordinators, if I'm not hoping that something goes awry so they can't try to improve or take a step up. That's probably where I'd be sitting because I love Mike Vrabel as a head coach. I think they have just enough talent on this team. It's just cohesive enough to make it work. But I think the way this team is structured talent-wise and just by the players they've gravitated towards, Downing and Bowen have to get this thing going the right direction. I just don't trust them to. I think they make too many mental lapses with some of their game day decisions. I don't know if they are going to be versatile enough or creative enough to really win at the NFL as good as defenses and as good as offenses are anymore.
I don't think, I didn't like the stubbornness to the identity probably will come back to bite them. And I think it's going to come back to bite them this year. I think the Titans were fake good last year. I think we proved that they were fake good last year when they lost a home playoff game to the Cincinnati Bengals.
Wait a second. Is that the barometer for being fake good?
No. But wild card game where
okay, there you go. There you go.
It's not the
same.
Clean it up.
They're
not built the same. And the last time I checked, the Titans didn't do something with 13 seconds the game just before. I'm sorry.
I think they threw an interception.
I can't equate the two. I can't. I refuse to equate the two. Arthur Smith allowed enough creativity to continue to ram their heads up against that brick wall because they did it in a variety of ways. I don't think that same kind of creativity exists with this offensive coaching staff, and I think that's one of the things that has been sorely missed is the logical build off of the run game, some of the creativity with the shifts and motions and all that kind of stuff. I don't think you see that the same way today as you did, and so I think the wheels are going to start falling off for this core that was destined to fail anyway. I think new additions though. What do you think, Matthew?
So I'm going to go with the receiver. He's going to primarily play out of the slot. I don't know if he'll be able to replace what AJ Brown does. Actually, I know for a fact he won't be able to replace what AJ Brown does, but I think that he's still a really good football player. That's of course Kyle Phillips, wide receiver out of UCLA. I think he's going to get a little bit more run on this roster than people think. I think everyone's going to see, I'm assuming the other new addition that you'll talk about here in a minute is my guess, with Treylon Burks, I guess, in case you don't. Kyle Phillips, entirely different skill set, different body type, different player, but I think he's really good. I think he's a guy that can jump into the NFL and immediately have And he said this himself, so it's not me just being silly and comparing him to another white slot receiver, some Hunter Renfrow to his game. He's a little he can come in and immediately be this possession receiver that's open frequently based on his route running and his quickness. I think he actually will provide them a little something that they don't have outside of him. Now, the issue is he is competing with Treylon Burks and Robert Woods, who are essentially slot only wide receivers as well. How do you play them all in the slot? That I don't know, but I think he does something a little different than the rest of them that I think they should be able to find a way to use him pretty soon.
I'll go Treylon Burks. It's fine.
Well, you can go with whoever you want to.
No,
we can just not talk about him.
I do want to go. I want to piggyback off of the Treylon Burks stuff because everything you just said is valid. Some of these guys that like to operate within the slot and all that kind of stuff, they've overhauled the receiver core. They're trying to overhaul the receiver core, and it's a little bit different, than they've had. It seems like they want Treylon Burks to be the AJ Brown in some capacity because they want to try to get that big physical guy over the middle of the field catching footballs and trying to run through defenses and all that stuff. That's kind of some of the explanation that they gave during the post draft stuff too. I don't think it's gonna. I'm dubious. The more and more that we kind of hear about the Treylon Burks situation to this point, it sounds like it's kind of been rocky with the conditionings and being incapable of finishing practice and asthma and all some of these other things. It's just like it's interesting that his post draft so far hasn't been overly promising, and Treylon Burks is not the same athlete as AJ Brown. And like he represents the most size and the bigger bodied type in that receiver group that Ryan Tannehill is really liked in the past and liked throwing to. I'm fascinated to see how this group kind of gels and if it works well for a Ryan Tannehill. Players to watch, Matthew.
I'm gonna have to go with my guy here. Ride or die with him from the get go. We're going with Jeffrey Simmons, defensive tackle. I love him. I think he's a fantastic player. I think he's on a strong upswing of his career. There was, a lot of talking between him and Quentin Spain after that Bengals playoff loss last year, where Jeffrey Simmons was pretty darn good in that game. He just gets better and better. And like we've talked about it, how Chris Jones is kind of on an island as the second best defensive tackle in the NFL right now because Fletcher Cox is getting a little bit older. Ndamukong Suh's getting older. Like all the guys that were Geno Atkins, all these guys that were competing for that DT2 spot are getting a little older. DeForest Buckner might be there, but I mean, Simmons is coming. Jeffrey Simmons is coming. He's right there on their heels, and he's the one guy out of all these players that I've mentioned that is clearly getting better year after year. It's like he's on the verge of becoming a dominant interior defensive lineman. If he makes that final step, if he gets to that final Chris Jonesian level step, Aaron Donald, obviously he's not going to get there, but he takes that kind of step to where he gets to this dominant level to where teams have to double team him at times. Teams have no answer. That's going to go a long way and let Danico Autry, who played amazing for them last year, and Harold Landry and Bud Dupree, all these guys just tee off because offenses will be forced to give so much attention to Simmons at that point in time. Like, I think if this team wants to take a step forward this year, if they want to be a better team, not better record, but just a better team, it's Simmons taking that next step and going from rising star, great defensive tackle to one of the absolute elite defensive tackles in the NFL.
I knew we were going to get to him. There was no doubt about it that one of us was going to be touching on Jeffrey.
Listen, Fred Warner and Jeffrey Simmons, you're not going to have me talk about the Titans and the 49ers and not mention those two names.
I'll talk about another guy that's pretty on brand for us. Harold Landry, pass rusher. He just signed a massive deal with the Tennessee Titans to remain with the Tennessee Titans. He is coming off a 12.5 sack season, I believe, the best season of his career. And this is a guy with some real juice off the edge and actual ability to bend and turn the corner, which is, it's a special ability relative to the rest of the NFL. Like he's got it for sure, always has. Health's been an issue for him in the past. But I mean, you saw him build and have an outstanding contract year. I'm expecting to see that continue here. And I think Harold Landry is absolutely a guy to watch off the edge. Matty, I'll answer. Non-Mahomes player that would make the Titans better. Let's see. I mean, Travis Kelce's an easy answer. I mean, that's a guy that a reliable safety blanket for Ryan Tannehill, a bigger body guy that he's like to throw to. The Titans have learned to use the tight end very well. I don't know if he's the best. I mean, he'd be an interesting fit. Like, I think the Titans would deal with it because, it's Travis Kelce, but he's not the greatest inline blocker at this age. So, like, there's always that. But I think whatever, figured out. Who cares? Maybe he's not blocking. Maybe he's playing X. But Travis Kelce is the reliable option, is the guy that completes this football team if it's not Patrick Mahomes.
Yeah, the Chiefs are in a strange spot here with this kind of stuff because, like, I don't know if they have a lot of great answers for players that make other teams better, and that's kind of shows you the state that they're in. Travis Kelce is obvious one. The tried and true Joe Tooney makes like 30 other teams in the NFL better. Same thing with Creed Humphrey. I would argue Trey Smith as well. So, like, any of those interior offensive linemen, Travis Kelce are kind of your go-tos. This is one of the few teams where Justin Reed, I think, is better than Armani Hooker, and he would make them better, but I don't know if that's the best place to go. Looking through their roster, I almost want to say Nick Bolton, because Zach Cunningham's all right, I guess, but I think Nick Bolton steps in there, and I think he would give them a lot of what they wanted Rashaan Evans to be when they drafted him. I think he gives you that downhill, run-stuffing, throwback linebacker that's like the perfect antithesis of Derrick Henry across from, like, you have the good running back, and then you have the run-stopping linebacker to play along.
That's a Vrabel guy.
Yeah, so I think Nick Bolton would fit in really well for they do. They don't really have much of an issue necessarily stopping the run or being out physical, but I think Nick Bolton would fit in really well with the rest of them instead of Zach Cunningham. So he's a guy on the short list. But I mean, it's probably one of the interior offensive line. It's probably Kelce, then one of the interior offensive linemen. But Nick Bolton's another guy. I just wanted to throw his name into the scrum.
Or Chad Henne. How does this team beat the Chiefs, Matthew?
Jeffrey Simmons has a career game. Bud Dupree, Harold Landry do a lot of what they did last year where they were getting deep pressure up the arc. The interior offensive line have their hands full with Autry, with Simmons. All this pressure's coming at them. The Chiefs can't really get into their bag trying to push the ball downfield, much like last year. And then the Titans, get an early lead, whether it's a couple lucky breaks, whether it's Derrick Henry running all over the Chiefs. Like, something has to happen to get the Chiefs out in front, or the Titans out in front. Let this defensive line start to eat. I think that Titans game was a turning point for the Chiefs offensive line and the way they were gelling with Patrick Mahomes, though. I don't think you're going to get that same thing again. So the Titans would have to be better than they were last year when they played. But I think the kind of game plan would be similar, is jumping out to an early lead and relying on that defensive line that does have a fair amount of talent on it.
Yeah, things got to snowball, and I think that's one of the things with the Titans is, if they get out to a lead, they put pressure on you and they're going to continue to ram, the ball down your throat, and they're going to try to be physical. And I mean, the Chiefs got punked the last time that these two teams played. Out physicality, the physicality that was kind of at that end of that kind of stretch where you were just like questioning if they had it, if they had the fastball that year, if they, had the kind of resolve to handle what teams were throwing at them. They finally figured it out, but it took a while last year. And I think, the Titans set the tone with the run game. They're able to be physical. Ryan Tannehill doesn't turn the ball over. Good things happen. Non-Mahomes Chiefs MVP, Matthew, what you got?
Listen, this is the height of the Titans slot defenders. 5'9", 5'10", 5'10", 5'10", 5'11". Okay, maybe the linebacker is a little bit bigger. Their coverage linebacker and David Long, 5'10". They have nobody that has height and length to defend in the slot, to defend over the middle of the field. Yeah, we know what that is. That's Travis Kelce's music. I understand last year he's a little quiet against them, and they might have, a good plan because they do have Kevin Byard is a very good safety. He can make it a little difficult for Travis Kelce to find success if he goes into his zone, but he doesn't have to. That's the thing, is you want to let Kevin Byard go shadow Travis Kelce. That's fine. I'd live with that. I think Kelce will beat him eventually one-on-one, but that's not how the Titans play. They don't play man coverage. It's a lot of zone. You're going to get a lot of different bodies on Kelce, and I think as long as the Chiefs are smart and avoid him getting pressed at the line, getting punched in the mouth at the line, and let him run into open space against all these short guys with short arms, Roger McCreary ain't stopping Travis Kelce with them baby arms. Elijah Molden, please. Like, these guys are all tiny dudes. Let your big receivers and then your big tight end go to work. So Kelce's the most reliable of the bunch. Easy 150 yards in this one.
Well, why don't we just go with Marquez Valdes-Scantling today here? Actually, no, what? Let's go with Juju Smith-Schuster this time. Actually, no, we'll go. You talk about the smaller guys operating in the middle of the field. The other guy that's going to operate in the middle of the field is Juju Smith-Schuster, and this is a good game for him to kind of have a lot of success and feast in the middle of the field against some of those smaller guys. So this could be a game in between the numbers. I mean, Caleb Farley's the bigger guy outside. Like he's the bigger corner outside. He's the length. So I was gonna say Marquez Valdes-Scantling, but there's some length outside to challenge out there. Let's just keep it along the interior, baby. Let's go with Juju Smith-Schuster. Both of those guys feast in the middle of the field. Guess the line.
Where's this game at? Is this a home or away?
This is a home game on Sunday Night Football.
Ooh. Is the NFL going to like the Titans again? Is Vegas going to like the Titans again? Chiefs 3.5.
Chiefs -5.5.
Okay. See, I'm really off today, but that doesn't make any sense to me. That's
I think it makes perfect sense because I think the Titans are fake good, and I think the Chiefs are about to.
What was the 49ers though?
1.5.
Okay,
in San Fran.
Yeah, in San Fran. So the 49ers with 1.5 in San Fran. So the Chiefs, I don't know. It seems like
the Niners are 2 points better than the Titans in a neutral site. I think that's 100% true.
That's bold.
The Titans.
I think the two teams are relatively similar. And if I'm going to be honest, I don't think Ryan Tannehill's any good, but I trust him more than I trust Trey Lance right now.
I think the Titans are about to regress big time. That's what I think.
Maybe.
I think it's
fine.
happening.
It's interesting. I would not have pegged those two teams being seen that differently. I would have said, if anything, the Titans would be 2 points more favored in Vegas than the 49ers, just looking at their roster, past successes, how everything's are shaked out. It's a surprise. That's all.
Yeah, well, I think the Chiefs are winning both of these games, and that's all that matters. That is going to do it for the game preview episode this week. Thank you guys so much for listening. If you like the show, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, leave comments, tell us what you think. Hopefully the Titans find it, and so they can hear all these wonderful statements that we have to say about their team.
Come at Kent Swanson, not me.
That's fine. At
I gave you guys some
Swanson
credit.
on Twitter.
Said you're better than the 49ers.
Hey, hate follow me. I don't care. We'll catch you later.